Mashed potatoes are a must, especially when it comes to the holidays. It's basically the side dish that keeps on giving, am I right? Surprisingly, there are quite a few mistakes when it comes to mastering the art of mashed potatoes. We went through about 20 pounds of potatoes to bring you the ultimate, creamy, super smooth mashed potatoes. They're seriously so good. You're gonna wanna lick the plate. There's two types of potatoes, starchy and waxy. For mashed potatoes, you want a starchy potato. A potato with higher starch and low moisture will yield a fluffier inside. We're using Yukon Gold potatoes. They're actually somewhere in between a starchy and a waxy potato. They're harder to overmash and have a foolproof, creamy texture. We're gonna peel the potatoes before boiling. Some people like to leave the skin on their mashed potatoes, which creates a little bit more texture, but for really creamy, silky smooth mashed potatoes with a uniform texture, it's gonna work a lot better with the skin off. Quick tip. To keep your potatoes from discoloring and oxidizing as they sit out, place them in a bowl of cold water while you work. After you've peeled your potatoes, cut them into 1-inch cubes. This way they're gonna cook more quickly and evenly. Add your potatoes to a pot of cold water and add a very generous pinch of salt. This is gonna help build the layers of flavor as the potatoes cook, which means you'll need less salt down the line. Now we're gonna bring the potatoes to a soft boil over high heat. Once you've reached a soft boil, reduce the heat to low and simmer for about 12 minutes. You'll know your potatoes are ready for mashing when they're fork tender. Go ahead and remove the pot from the heat and drain the potatoes through a colander. At this point, you're actually going to place the potatoes back in the pot over medium-high heat and stir them around for 2 to 3 minutes. That's just going to release any excess moisture. At the end of this, the potatoes should be super dry. When it comes to mashed potatoes, most people use a potato masher or even a fork. Some people use a potato ricer for a more uniform texture, which we're also really big fans of. If you don't have any of those tools and want to get a similar result, you can use a fine mesh sieve. Place the boiled potatoes in the sieve and use a spatula to gently push them down. I'm not gonna lie, this definitely takes more muscle and is more time consuming, but the potatoes are gonna be so silky smooth and beautiful, it's really worth the effort. Whatever you do, do not use a food processor or a hand mixer. This is gonna overwork the potatoes, creating a gummy-like paste. And let's be real, no one wants that. Now, it wouldn't be mashed potatoes without adding some butter. You wanna use unsalted butter because it allows you to control the amount of salt in your mashed potatoes. We made so many variations of mashed potatoes and taste tested all of them. We tried cold butter, milk, melted butter, sour cream, cream cheese, heavy cream. And after all that, we decided to stick with melted butter and heavy cream. While some people do like sour cream and cream cheese, we found that the flavor really stood out and took away from that uniform consistency and texture that we were looking for. Quick tip, you always want to add your butter before adding any cream or milk. This is going to ensure that the texture of the potato remains firm before being softened by all that cream. If you add your butter and your cream all at once, it's going to create this really soupy texture, whereas if you go gradually, it'll be nice and smooth and creamy. So remember how we talked about building flavors? This is another time where you're going to season it with salt. Add your heavy cream to a small saucepan over medium-high heat. This is also the moment when you can enhance the flavor of your mashed potatoes. We're gonna add some rosemary sprigs and garlic, but you can get creative with other herbs and ingredients as well. Bring the heavy cream mixture to a simmer. Once it's simmering for a few minutes and that cream is getting really infused with flavor, you're gonna strain out the garlic and the rosemary through a sieve, and then add just the cream to the potatoes little by little until they're fully incorporated. Remember, if you add all the heavy cream at once, it's just gonna become a soupy mess. As you fold the heavy cream into the mashed potatoes, you're gonna see this really smooth texture start to come together. I mean, it's so beautiful. It's that easy. Your potatoes are finally ready to serve. So, because it's tasty, we're gonna top it with more butter. We're also gonna add some freshly ground black pepper, some chives. You can really experiment with your toppings, but this is a pretty classic preparation. Or if it's that special time of year, pass the gravy, baby. I mean, come on, what's not to love? And there you have it, the creamiest mashed potatoes you've ever laid eyes on. Or in our case, our taste buds. Every good cook should know how to roast a chicken. It's an essential skill. But to a lot of people, it can seem really intimidating. So we did the dirty work and spent weeks testing, roasting, and carving. And we found the juiciest, crispiest, most foolproof roast chicken recipe you'll ever need. Before we get cooking, we need to talk chickens, specifically how to buy the right chicken. The most important thing to consider is size. How many pounds per person do you really need? A good rule of thumb is that for every one person, you need about a half pound of chicken. We'd also recommend getting an air-chilled chicken rather than a water-chilled one. While air-chilled chickens are more expensive, they aren't packed with extra water, allowing them to cook more evenly and to stay more moist. Once you have your chicken, it's time to get it prepped. But before we do, you don't need to wash your chicken. This won't rinse away any of the bacteria. You actually run the risk of contaminating other parts of your kitchen. So let's get down to business. The number one key to a crispy chicken is getting it as dry as possible. Using a paper towel, blot the chicken on all sides, including the cavity, until there's no more visible moisture left. Any excess moisture will prevent the chicken from getting that crispy, crackly skin. Once the chicken is dried, generously season the outside, including the underside, with kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper. A lot of recipes use herbs and spices to season their chickens, like rosemary, thyme, and sage. But for our recipe, we're keeping it simple. Salt and pepper is all you need. So this next bit may seem a bit unorthodox. Take any pointy implement, we used a toothpick, and poke 20 or so holes all over the chicken, including the legs. The exact number doesn't really matter. Just make sure you cover every bit of the surface. This method lets excess moisture out, guaranteeing you crisp skin. Once you're done, transfer it to a rimmed baking dish and let the chicken rest in the fridge for at least 8 hours to really let the salt work its magic. This is called a dry brine. Salt isn't just for seasoning. This will draw even more moisture from the chicken, tenderizing the meat and really upping the skin's crisp factor. We also tried wet brining our bird, and while the flavor was great, the skin didn't get as crispy as our dry brine, despite it taking even more work. We also tested stuffing the cavity with vegetables and aromatics, but they added excess moisture while roasting, which prevented the chicken from getting crispy. Just before you're ready to take it out, preheat your oven to 450 degrees. Once you take it out of the fridge, let the chicken rest for an hour at room temperature, like you would any other meat. Just before it's time to pop the chicken in the oven, we're going to tie it up or truss it. Trussing your chicken will result in a more evenly cooked bird. Take a piece of butcher's twine. We'd recommend a piece about 3 feet long. Loop the twine around the legs, pulling them together. Then slip each piece of twine under its respective leg. Pull the twine up to the top of the chicken, then flip the whole bird over. Pull the twine under the wings, looping it around the neck, and then tie it off, cutting away any excess twine. Finally, flip the bird back over and tuck the wings under the breasts. And there you go, you're a trussing expert. Now, a rack is the ideal way to roast a chicken. It raises the bird from the base of the pan, allowing excess juices to run off, and lets the heat fully circulate around the chicken, once again ensuring an even cook. Some people prefer roasting their chicken with the breasts down. When we tested this, the meat was super juicy, but the skin was soggy. We're roasting ours breast side up. It gives you that classic roast chicken look, and you'll have succulent meat and great skin. If you don't have a rack, don't worry. Cover a tray with whichever hearty vegetables you want. These will act just like the rack, elevating the chicken from the surface of the tray. Plus, they'll soak up all the flavorful juices and make a really good side dish. Now you're finally ready to roast your chicken. I know 450 seems high. Because the bird is dry brined, the meat is going to be exceptionally juicy. The skin is going to be perfectly crispy. However, the right way to determine its doneness is by taking the temperature. Stick a meat thermometer into the thickest part of the chicken. Once it reads 165, you're good to go. Once your chicken is done, let it rest for at least 20 minutes. To be thorough, we tested roasting a chicken at a slightly lower temperature for a longer time. And while still good, we found the lower heat didn't allow the skin to get as crispy, and the meat started to get dried out. And that's it. You've roasted a chicken and it's ready to serve. Now, we're going to walk you through how to carve a chicken. It takes some practice, but it's a really useful skill. But first, a quick anatomy lesson. There's the keel bone down the middle, the breasts, drumsticks, and wings. To start, clip the twine from the legs and remove it from the whole bird. To carve off the leg, cut between it and the breast. Another good indicator of the chicken's doneness is if the juices run clear from the cut. When you reach the joint, bend it back and cut right through. To remove the wings, simply twist them right off. Finally, to remove the breasts, cut down along the keel bone, slice in as closely to the bone as you can. Then, angling your knife outwards, remove the breast. So you'll have the breast, wing, and leg, which can be further broken down into a thigh and drumstick if you want. Quick pro tip. If you flip the chicken over, there are two very flavorful small pieces of meat on the bottom called the oysters. You can use your hands to simply pull them out. Save these flavorful bits for yourself. They're a chef's treat. And there you have it. You're now a chicken roasting pro. Impress your friends, impress your family, or even impress yourself. Making a roast chicken is neither hard nor complicated. It just takes time and patience. If you follow our steps, we can guarantee this will be the only roast chicken recipe you'll ever want to make. Okay, we've got one more tip. If you want to reduce waste and get the most out of your chicken, don't throw out all the leftover pieces. Add your leftover chicken to a large pot along with onions, celery, carrots, garlic, and any other aromatics you want, and then cover it with water. Bring it to a boil over high heat, and then reduce it to simmer for about 8 hours, skimming the fat off as you need. You'll have homemade chicken stock, which you can use in so many recipes.
Dinner rolls are actually a super sexy, super satisfying, and honestly like one of the better parts of a big banquet meal. It's a very easy introduction to dough and introduction to bread. But dinner roll is basically like your fourth utensil, right? So you have your fork, your knife, your spoon, and then you have your dinner roll. And that's what's gonna help sop up all of like the really best parts of your dinner. So respect it. There's a bunch of different types of flour out there. You've got the whole wheat that has the bran in there. You've got almond flour, all these different gluten-free options nowadays. We're gonna use all-purpose. When you're starting out making bread, all-purpose is a great one to start with. Because it is so refined, it's very predictable. It's gonna give you the result that you're after. Yeast. So there's like 3 standard ones you can get in the US and around the world. They're called different things in different places. You have active dry, you have instant yeast, and you also have fresh. Here we have all the different tests for yeast to see what would the result be in the bread. Could we really taste or see a difference in the rising in terms of speed, how big the dough's got, all of that. So we bloomed the fresh and the active dry. We did not bloom the rapid because it is not recommended to do so. We all used the exact same amount of ingredients. We used the flour from the same bag, but all of ours were different levels of soft. The instant was super hard. The active dry was kind of the mama bear of them. It was like kind of the in-between, and the fresh was like super soft. So because we want to have a little bit more control over our dough, we wanted to use active dry. So to wake it up, we're going to put it in a liquid, and the sugar and butter are going to act as food for the yeast. To make our blooming liquid, we're going to start with some warm milk. We're going to add a little bit of warm water and melted butter. To that, we're going to add sugar. Sugar is going to be the main thing that's going to give our yeast some food to really quickly start to work. In goes our yeast. We're going to stir it to make sure that the granules can evenly dissolve and be mixed in evenly with all those ingredients. So we're going to leave that for about 5 minutes, and it should look something like this. If you don't see anything close to this, you should throw everything away and start with some new yeast. Your yeast might be old or dead. So once you've bloomed our yeast, we're going to set it off to the side. In goes the flour and the salt, and we're going to just super quickly incorporate the salt into the flour, again, so it doesn't like hit a huge block of salt when the yeast goes in. We're going to add an egg to this dough. That's going to further enrich our dough. It's also going to give us a little bit of color, a bit of extra flavor, and a bit of oomph. Add it to our bloomed yeast mixture, and then just quickly as you can, pour it into the flour. I'm going to use the same knife just to hydrate as much of the flour as quickly as I can. So once I'm getting it to a roughly kind of shaggy dough, I can pour it out of my bowl without making too huge of a mess onto a clean floured surface and really start to make this into a dough. This dough is definitely on the wetter side, so you want to keep a little bit of bench flour, and that just means a little extra flour around to add to your dough as you go to make it a little bit easier to work with and so that it's not too wet. The cool thing with bread is that wetter is better, unlike pastry, which you want to be on the drier side. So it's pretty fun to work with, it's pretty easy to work with as well, but if it's really sticking to your hands or to the surface, all you need to do is add a little bit more flour and it'll be much easier to work with. And depending on like how old your flour is, how big your egg is, I mean, there's so much that's going in here, you're probably gonna need more flour than you think. Before you go too far, get all these extra bits off your hands from when you first start rolling, because no matter what, like you're gonna have a little bit of those scraggly bits on your hands. So get those off and start incorporating those into your dough early so that you don't have like big scraggly bits later on. Again, because you're gonna be kneading for a good 10 minutes or so, those will pretty easily be incorporated into the dough, but if you wait too long, then you'll just have like a big chunk. So kneading. This is one thing that I think people tend to underdo almost always. So if you're doing this by hand, I promise you it's like almost impossible to over knead. If you are using a stand mixer, it is possible, and what will start to happen, it will kind of fall apart. It'll just turn almost like liquidy, and that means that you've just overworked the gluten and you over kneaded it. But by hand, trust me, you're probably under kneading it. What I like to do is I like to roll the dough on top of itself and then push it out. Rotate, fold it over itself, push again. Rotate, pull over itself, and push. So you can just continue to do this. I like to work kind of in a bit of a ball shape, always making kind of the shape of a roll. And once I'm getting the dough to a place that I kind of like, I'm actually gonna switch to this heart method. It just makes it a little bit more efficient. And so you just roll it back, and then by the time you've come down towards you, it's in the shape of a cylinder almost. And then you roll the other way. So you're making sure that you're really evenly kneading out the dough and not totally exhausting one of your arms. And to tell that you've kneaded enough, a really easy thing to do is to pull off a piece of the dough and make a little bit of a window pane with it and stretch it out. If it doesn't tear, you can actually see those strands of gluten that have developed, and that should give you a pretty good indicator that your dough is ready to rise. Or you can push into the dough, and if it bounces back at you, you've developed enough gluten and the dough is ready to sit. Once we're ready, we're going to oil a bowl, put our dough inside of it, make sure that's covered in the oil as well so it doesn't stick, and then cover with cling film to rise in a warm area. And then to get all of the dough and flour and everything off the bench, these bench scrapers are amazing and such an easy like cook's tool. You should definitely get one. As this cling film kind of fogs up, that's actually all this gas being released that we talked about. That's the yeast working. So all of that rising in that dough is creating that little bit of like condensation within the bowl. So this is actually a rise. The proof is gonna happen after it's doubled in size. If you want a slow rise, you can put the dough in your fridge, whereas if leaving it out in a warm place, it'll happen a lot quicker. With active dry yeast, it should double in size in about an hour. Take off the cling and pop. So we punch it pretty much just because it's fun, but also because we're gonna turn out the dough and even out all those bubbles in the dough. So I'm gonna knead it again for a few minutes and kind of even out the different texture within the dough. And then we're gonna cut it into pieces. So if you want super exact dough balls, you should definitely invest in a scale and weigh them out. Another trick if you want really even sized bread rolls is to always work in halves. So the easiest thing for me is I just continue to cut things in half. So I have this big piece, I'm gonna cut this piece in half and just continue to cut these pieces in half. And for me, it's easier to make them into round balls again. Again, just to make sure that I'm being super, precise with my cut to get even sized bread rolls. So now that we have our dough divided into its pieces, it's time to shape them into their cute little rolls. So before I even start shaping it, I'm gonna start to knead the little pieces. So you can do a few different things. You can knead it the same way that we were talking about before, and press it into a little disc first, and then take the outer pieces and push them into the center. But what you're really trying to do when it's all said and done, regardless of whatever technique that you use, is you're trying to make the bottom of the piece that you're rolling taut. So what we really want is to gather all the outside pieces in the middle and then make the top of it taut. So what I'm doing here is I'm using my hands to kind of pinch from like the middle of the roll to the very bottom. And when I do that, I'm also rotating my hands. So every time I'm doing that, I'm squeezing the bottom and making sure that I'm making the top taut and making all the ugly pieces be on the bottom. So take your time with shaping. Like you've gotten it this far, make sure that they're really beautiful when it's all said and done. But this is also something that you can definitely outsource. I always get made fun of at Tasty because I'm always trying to give people jobs to do. But if you have a whole bunch of people coming over, this is definitely an easy way to get everyone involved. And playing with dough is very satisfying. There's just something about it that's very soothing and very soulful in some ways. So there's no one who's gonna say no. I mean, it's so fun to do. So once we're happy with all of our shaped dough, I'm gonna place them on a parchment-lined baking sheet, and you want them to be a little bit far, but not too far, because I really want these to touch a little bit. That's the dinner roll look, you gotta have it. I know you're eager, you've gotten these all in their perfect shapes, but they need to rise just a little bit more. So the first one was the rise, and now our rolls are going to proof. We're gonna cover it up with cling, and then let it sit for 30 minutes, an hour. We want them to rise again. We've been a little bit needy with the dough. You guys have had too much time together, so now the dough needs a little bit of space before it'll really perform. And look how pillowy those are. I mean, seriously, like look how much they've risen, and they're now touching, but not too much. Last thing, so if you watched our pie episode, we tested a whole bunch of different washes to put on dough before it goes in the oven. And honestly, egg is just super easy and classic and gives you a really great shiny brown. And for that dinner roll shine, like you need an egg wash. Take your time. Like these are delicate little babies at this point. So if you come in real hot with that brush and just like really poke them, they will deflate a little bit. Now this is totally optional, but we are going to top ours with a little bit of sea salt, mostly because I just can never get enough salt. Season high, the higher you go, it'll be a more even distribution. If you season too close to the roll, it'll all kind of get in one clump. I'm sure you've experienced that before. Tested a few different temperatures. So bread ideally does need a pretty high heat, but these are little baby rolls, so we did have to throw back the heat a little bit. We ended up with 375. Wow. And that gives us like the perfect amount of brown while cooking the rolls through. Freshly baked bread is just one of those things that, I mean, the crumb on this, the texture here, I mean, you could sleep on this. It's like a pillow. I mean, look at that. It's got a great, sweet, savory flavor on the inside. You've got the sesame seeds. You can do garlic butter. You can do, I mean, anything. Or you can do nothing and just sop it up with some gravy or butter or jam, or it cannot be overstated how much this fourth utensil will contribute to your next dinner party. I'm not eating anything else this holiday season aside from bread rolls. Make these bread rolls, tag us in your photos, because I need to know that the world believes in bread rolls as much as we believe in bread rolls.
Prime rib, a true holiday showstopper. Prime rib is definitely one of the most impressive pieces of meat you can make for your family, your friends. It's really something a lot of people have on the holidays or a special occasion. Because of its price tag, you really want to make sure you're getting it right. We tested a bunch of recipes and different techniques, so you don't have to. Here's everything you need to know about how to make the ultimate prime rib. All you're gonna need is a great prime rib, salt, pepper, and a little bit of time and patience. One big debate about buying prime rib is whether to get bone-in or boneless. A bone-in roast is known to give you a more flavorful, more tender result because the bone insulates the meat as it cooks. But it can also be really time-consuming to carve. So we'd actually recommend that you get a boneless roast and have your butcher tie the bones back onto the meat. That way you're still gonna get that great flavor from the bones and it'll be insulated and tender, but you won't have to deal with carving it. Another question a lot of people have when buying prime rib: prime or choice? If you're already splurging, we'd recommend going with the prime grade roast. While prime grade prime rib is harder to find, it really has the best flavor. If you're going big, you might as well go big. The last question is, how much should you buy? We'd recommend about a pound per person. After the prime rib is cooked, you'll end up with about a half pound per person. Now that you know what kind of prime rib to buy, let's get cooking. So the night before you make your prime rib, you want to take it out of the fridge and blot it completely dry with paper towels. If you have excess moisture, the prime rib isn't going to dry out as much, which isn't going to result in that crispy, crackly crust that we really want to get. So once the prime rib is completely dry, you're going to generously season it with kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper. Kosher salt is actually less salty than iodized salt or table salt. Freshly ground black pepper is going to add just that really great peppery flavor, whereas pre-ground, it's just not the same. I know this looks like a lot, but to really make sure that the roast is fully flavored from the inside out, you need to be generous with your seasoning. You're going to put it into a rimmed baking sheet. The rimmed baking sheet is just going to prevent any juices that might, float out. It's going to keep everything contained. Transfer it to the fridge and let it sit uncovered overnight. If you don't have time to let it sit overnight, at least try to do it for 2 to 4 hours. It'll make a big difference in your final prime rib. Once the prime rib has rested overnight, you're going to take the prime rib out of the fridge and place it on a rack in a roasting pan. It's really important to let the prime rib come to room temperature because if you put a cold piece of meat in a hot oven, it's going to bring down the temperature of the oven and therefore result in an uneven cook. Some people cover their prime rib with butter or other herbs and seasonings. While it does add flavor, it's kind of too overpowering. This is such a delicate, beautiful piece of meat that's inherently really fatty, so adding more fat to it makes it really intense. Adding other seasonings or other herbs, you can do it, but you really don't need it, and be conscious that adding some of those things might burn in the oven. So that's really it. Now we're ready to roast. So the trick to getting that beautiful crispy exterior is to start in a really hot oven. We're gonna start at 450 degrees for 30 minutes, then reduce the temperature to 325 and roast for 11 to 12 minutes per pound. Every roast is gonna be a different weight and therefore cook for a different amount of time. You're spending so much money on this piece of meat, you really wanna do it right. Some people prefer cooking their prime rib low and slow. We found that by doing this, you can get a decent prime rib, but the fat doesn't render in the same way, and you don't get the same crispy exterior. With a prime rib, you definitely want to make sure that you're not overcooking it. This is one of those times when a meat thermometer is absolutely non-negotiable. When the temperature reaches 120, you want to take it out. Once the prime rib comes out of the oven, you're going to cover it with tinfoil and tent it for about 30 minutes. The temperature is still going to rise about 10 degrees to get you that perfect medium rare roast. It's also going to absorb the juices as it's resting. I know you might want to cook it a bit more, but really trust us. For prime rib, it's such an expensive, beautiful piece of meat, you don't want to overcook it. So from here, it's pretty easy. You're going to transfer the prime rib to a cutting board to start carving it. You can also save all those amazing juices from the roasting pan to make an au jus to top your prime rib with if you want. So now we're going to begin carving. First, you want to snip off the strings that are holding the bones back. So because we have the butcher tie back the ribs, it's really easy at this point to remove it. So now just lift the bones right off the roast. It's so much easier than having to carve them if we had gotten a bone-in roast. Typically, prime rib slices are pretty thick. It's such a tender piece of meat that if you do really thin slices, it's just gonna fall apart. It's also the holidays. I mean, if there was ever a time to treat yourself, this would be it. When you cut into the roast, the center should be pink, the exterior should have that beautiful crackly skin, and the fat should be rendered. That's a sign of a great prime rib. Oh, look at that stunning prime rib. Prime rib is typically served with an au jus or a horseradish cream. Whichever you choose, you can't go wrong. Prime rib is deceptively simple. Your friends and family are going to be really impressed and think you've been in the kitchen working hard all day on it. Well, in reality, you were just letting it do its thing in the oven. Try it out, let us know what you think. Happy holidays.
Ooey gooey and packed with delicious melty cheese. Nothing says comfort like a homemade mac and cheese. And today, we're going to show you how we make our favorite baked mac and cheese. Countries across Europe were creating versions of this dish dating back to the Middle Ages. There's even a recipe in a 14th century Italian cookbook for sheet noodles cut into squares and sprinkled with grated cheese. While serving as a diplomat in France, Thomas Jefferson tried the French version and loved it so much he requested that his enslaved chef, James Hemmings, recreate it. Historians believe Hemmings should be given the true credit for bringing this dish to life. Just like Hemmings, many other enslaved chefs set the culinary example across America and often aren't credited for it. Hemmings' dish was served in 1802 at a state dinner. The dish grew in popularity from then on. So how do you make mac and cheese? There's only one place to start, and that's the noodles. There's so many options when it comes to pasta. There's radiatori, fusilli, cavatelli, shells, and probably the most commonly associated with mac and cheese, elbows. We recommend any short, curly pasta. We've decided that our favorite pasta for mac and cheese are shells. They're just the perfect size, and their shape allows you to get a beautiful burst of sauce with each noodle. So let's get cooking. We're going to boil the pasta in well-salted water for 2 minutes less than recommended on the package. You want the pasta to have a slight bite because it'll actually finish cooking in the oven. When it comes to mac and cheese, there are 2 types of cheeses we need. A melting cheese, which adds to the texture, and a flavored cheese, which adds to the taste. So what is an ideal melting cheese? American and Velveeta are both great melting cheeses because they have sodium citrate in them, which, as it melts, gives this creamy, gooey texture. Mozzarella is also a good melting cheese because it's super creamy and makes great cheese balls. But for our melting cheese today, we're going with American. And what makes a good flavor cheese? A few that are great for flavoring your mac and cheese are Fontina, which has a buttery and fruity flavor, Gruyere, which has a sweet, nutty, earthy flavor, Smoked Gouda, which has a meat-like flavor, Havarti, which has a sweet, herby flavor, and Cheddar, which has a bold and bright flavor. We've chosen sharp cheddar as our flavor cheese. This gives you the best of both worlds and creates the cheesiest, creamiest, and gooeyest mac and cheese. You always want to shred the cheese yourself because the pre-shredded cheese from the store is usually coated in additives that make it harder to melt. Now, we all know mac and cheese is only as good as its cheese sauce. We're going to start ours by adding some butter to a pot. Once it begins foaming, we'll add some mustard powder and cayenne and toast them for about a minute. Seasoning the dish at this step will really help to add depth of flavor. The spices will bloom and become aromatic, which will enhance their flavors and boost their intensity. Now, while you can season your mac and cheese with anything you want, we're keeping our recipe pretty simple. The bit of heat from our spices will help cut through the richness of the cream sauce, providing some nice balance. Now to add our liquids. The 3 most common liquids people use for mac and cheese are usually milk, heavy cream, and evaporated milk. The biggest difference between the 3 liquids is their water content. We found the combination of whole milk and heavy cream gave the best flavor and creamiest mouthfeel. Once our liquids come to a simmer, we'll add an egg. This will give the mac and cheese a custardy-like texture that helps the sauce bind to the pasta really well. Just be sure to temper your egg by adding a little bit of the warm milk mixture first. That way we don't end up with scrambled eggs. Let's add our cheese. Now this is the tricky part because while extremely satisfying, things can go very wrong here. Some cheeses melt differently than others, causing the fat and oil to begin to separate, resulting in a grainy sauce. But we've designed our mac and cheese to be foolproof. Since we aren't using a roux, our mac and cheese sauce won't crack. Another way to ensure your sauce won't crack is by adding cornstarch. Adding it directly to the cheese mixture rather than creating a slurry will help the sauce thicken more evenly and prevent clumping. And the key to evenly melt the cheese and ensure a proper emulsification is to add the cheese off of the heat. Keep stirring while adding the cheese handful by handful. You'll know your sauce is done when the cheeses have melted smoothly and it's slightly thickened. While the mac and cheese bakes, the sauce will continue to thicken. So we want to make a super creamy sauce to start so that when it's finished baking, we don't end up with a dry mac and cheese. We'll add our cooked shells to our cheese sauce and coat. Wow, I'm drooling. Let's add this to the baking dish and top with more cheese. We found that the combination of cheddar, mozzarella, and Parmesan cheese creates the most delicious and satisfyingly golden brown and crispy top. It's time to bake. We're focusing on the classic baked version. Baking mac and cheese allows you to get that crunchy, cheesy top and the best corner pieces. Some people cover their mac and cheese with foil to help prevent the dish from drying out while it's in the oven. We've made the ultimate saucy mac and covered our entire dish in cheese, so we don't need to cover it with anything additional. Since we want a crispy top to complement our saucy mac, we want to finish the dish under the broiler. The oven alone will help the topping melt, but the broiler will give it that iconic golden brown and crispy top we're after. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. But hold on. Before you sacrifice the roof of your mouth for this ooey gooey goodness, make sure to let your mac and cheese rest for at least 5 minutes. This will allow the sauce to set up a little and achieve its maximum creaminess. With mac and cheese, the opportunities are endless. You can have it as a side, in a bread bowl, or simply as is. It's filling, warm, and comforting. This mac and cheese is as Gouda as it gets. Shell yeah.
It's cookie season, y'all. That time of year where you're making a whole lot of cookies. Around the holiday season, is there anything more iconic than sugar cookies? We're going to give you our tasty tested sugar cookie recipe, complete with everything you need to have some darn good sugar cookies this holiday season. All right, so let's get started. So we're going to make our dough first. We're going to use room temperature softened butter. Listen, that is not melted butter. Melted butter is not the same. In we go. We want a really pale color, so that's why we're using white sugar here. And this is a secret ingredient. I know it doesn't look like cream cheese, but it is cream cheese. And this is gonna give us a little bit of like a savory flavor and a little bit of tanginess as well. What we're trying to do is cream the sugar and the butter together. So if you're feeling a lot of granules when you stick your finger in there, that's not good. We're trying to kind of almost dissolve the sugar in the butter. So we're gonna whip these together for about 5 minutes. They're gonna be much paler in color when we're done. It's gonna be much fluffier. So like you'll see a visual change. That's just whipping in air to that butter and sugar. And then don't forget to scrape down your bowl to make sure that you are incorporating all the ingredients equally. So now you can see we've got a really great creamed butter and sugar. We're good to go. At this point, we're gonna add 1 egg, 2 egg yolks, and our second secret ingredient is a combo of extracts. I think like vanilla is pretty common in sugar cookies, but we are gonna add a little bit of almond extract as well. A little bit goes a long way. It's a pretty powerful flavor, but it really adds something extra to these sugar cookies, and it's really delicious. Like you're gonna taste the difference. And to that, we just wanna make sure that all that liquid is well incorporated into the butter and sugar. So once we have the liquids well incorporated, we're gonna add a little bit of kosher salt here. Again, not to make it salty, just to be a flavor enhancer and balance out that sweetness. And so now we've got that in there, we're gonna add our all-purpose flour, and next goes in a little bit of baking powder. And this ingredient is our third little secret ingredient for this recipe, cream of tartar. Cream of tartar is actually what's left over in the barrel after wine making, and it's basically like just an acidic ingredient. So you're adding this, and this is gonna help with a few things. It's gonna give us like a really cool texture in the end, and it's also gonna prevent the cookies from browning too much. So I'm gonna fold in just to get it started because there's a lot of flour in here. I don't wanna make a huge mess. So I'm gonna fold to get it started, finish incorporating it with the beaters because it is a pretty dense mixture. There's a little bit of floury bits that aren't fully incorporated, that's fine. Again, to have like a really flaky and snappy cookie, you don't wanna overwork this mixture. So you're kind of like just incorporating the flour. You don't wanna go much more than that. This dough is almost kind of similar to like a pastry where you wanna keep it cold all the time. There's a lot of butter in here, so if it gets too greasy, it's gonna be really, really hard to work with, and you're not gonna have really clear, defined shapes. Dough goes onto some cling film, and then you can use the cling film to kind of like pull the pieces together. It's just like kind of sticky, so this is a really easy way to not make a huge mess. So this is gonna go into the fridge, and then we will roll it out in about 2 hours. Here are a few things you might need for rolling out your cookies. You need a rolling pin or a wine bottle, whatever you have at your house, and then something to measure the thickness with, a ruler, or our fourth little trick of this video, which we'll get to later. If you are making a lot of cookies or you're like an avid baker, they do have these like kind of cool rubber rolling pin thingies. I don't know what you call them, like a rolling pin stoppers, guards maybe. It really makes sure that you get like that perfect 1/4 inch. But you have to have like the perfect size rolling pins, and you have to buy them, they're specialty. So we're gonna show you a hack. So the enemy of rolling out anything is sticking to the surface that you're working on. So have a little bit of flour nearby. As you remember, we want to keep our dough super cold, so I'm going to work in batches. I'm going to put half of this back in the fridge and only roll out half at a time. All right, so this is a trick that we learned in culinary school. You really want an even 1/4 inch all throughout. To get the most even thickness, you want to press down on your dough like this, and it just kind of spreads it before you want to get into rolling. Every so often, you want to do like a 1/4 turn, and that's going to help make sure that you have an even roll, as well as to ensure that it's not sticking to the surface. This isn't like pie crust where you really have to be careful about the shape that you're making or whatever. This is just kind of a free-for-all. So I'm to a good place. I'm not really sure how thick mine is, so how do I measure this? You could use a ruler, but you know what's so annoying about this ruler is like, why does the 0 start so far up the ruler? Isn't that so annoying? But how else can you measure? Bottle caps. I was looking all over the kitchen for something else that's a 1/4 inch. I like to lay these around the dough while I'm rolling out just to make sure that all sides are that perfect 1/4 inch. The other thing too is pour out that extra bench flour, and that's what we're gonna use to flour our cutters to make sure that the cutters aren't sticking too much to the dough. So dip the cutter all the way in flour, dip off the excess, and then go ahead. And then just give it a little like zhuzh, a little shimmy to make sure that you've totally made contact with the surface on the bottom. And if you have enough cutters, what I like to do is go ahead and put all the cutters down and leave them. And that makes sure that nothing's pulling or tugging, and you get a really clean shape every time. And now you can start pulling them out. Sometimes the cookie comes with the cutter and sometimes it doesn't. So I like to kind of move around, pull off the excess, put it off to one side, save that dough because you can use that again. Just be careful that you're not like pulling or tugging at everything because you really want the shape to be really clean. And then look at that. So you can definitely reuse these scraps. What you want to do is get them back into like a cohesive dough ball and then put them back in the fridge. They're really warm after all that rolling and working with them. So get the cold one out of the fridge and put that one back in there for another like 20 minutes or so it can firm back up. And there we go. If you have some shapes that are smaller than the other ones, I would put those off to the side so that if you need to pull them early, you can so that they don't overbake. Okay, put these guys in the fridge. If you put them in the oven now, they're gonna spread way too much and they're not gonna have a clean shape. They will come out super clean, super crisp. As you can tell, they're still very pale and they haven't spread that much. Yay. Go ahead and take them off and let them cool completely on a drying rack. Time to decorate. So we chose royal icing because it sets a little bit harder. If you're gonna be really crazy with decorating, royal icing is definitely the way to go. So despite its royal name, royal icing is pretty simple. So all you really need is some sifted powdered sugar. You might need a little bit of water, a bit of salt, an extract if you'd like it, and egg whites. The thing about this is that we will be consuming this, so you really want to make sure that you're buying pasteurized egg whites so that they're safe for everyone to enjoy. Or you can use meringue powder, which is an egg white substitute. We might need water, it kind of depends on what we're going for. But first we're going to add salt and a little bit of vanilla for flavor, and we're going to put this off to the side. So all the liquids we're going to put on one side of the powdered sugar, and I'll show you why in a second. Make sure to shake those egg whites ahead of time, and in they go. Again, making sure that they're on one side of the bowl. And so now we're going to just work in that one part of the bowl and just slowly incorporate more of the powdered sugar as I go. And that's gonna help make sure that I have a really smooth icing. If you're trying to incorporate all of that powdered sugar at once, it's just like a little bit harder to work with, and also you probably will get some lumps. Royal icing is all about consistency. So depending on how you want to decorate yours, there's kind of like two consistencies that you're going for. There's a thicker consistency for more of like lining things out or like borders of things. And then there's a flood, which is gonna be just a thinned out version. And that water is gonna come in handy when we're looking for that flood consistency. So we're starting here with a thicker royal icing. We're also gonna add coloring to this, which will thin it out a little bit too. So err on the side of thicker when you're getting started. So we're gonna separate the icing into a few different bowls. If you're gonna be doing a lot of decorating or using a lot of different colors, it's probably worth it to double or even triple this recipe. Go ahead and put in your gel food colorings to get really, really bright colors. The thing that's cool about royal icing is it sets, right? So like it'll set kind of hard. Even in this time, while we're trying to get everything set up, you can already see a little bit this kind of skin that forms on top. So you do wanna work a little bit quickly with royal icing or else cover it with cling film. And then just to fix it, just add a little bit of water and stir. So now we can do one of two things with this flood consistency, flooding or dipping. So go ahead and put the cookie, dip it in the icing, make sure it's really well coated, knock off any excess, and then it's gonna kind of settle into the cookie and be a really smooth and even shape. And then to flood, what you gotta do, you want like a thicker frosting in a piping bag, and then go ahead and just trace the outside with whatever color that you're doing. And then you want to let this harden for a little bit before you go to the next step. But once it is hard, all you need to do is take that thinned out icing and you can either spoon it in like I'm doing, or you can also put it in a piping bag and pipe it in and then use a toothpick to spread it out evenly. That bit that you piped in the beginning is dried, so it kind of acts as like a wall or a border to ensure that all of that icing is staying inside. If you're gonna put sprinkles on it, go ahead and put the sprinkles on when it's wet. But if you want to decorate over that, go ahead and let that set for a good like 10, 15 minutes or so, and then you can continue decorating on top of it. So it kind of depends what look you're going for. And as you can see, like these dots are kind of settling on top of it and not really falling into that flood. And then if you want to decorate any more or put any other like toppings on top of it, you're gonna have to layer more icing on just to make sure that they stick. There's like something magical about this. Baking cookies, it's kind of like what gets you ready for the holidays, right? Like, you know it's the holiday season when it's time to bake the sugar cookies and it's time to decorate them. And, you know, people really appreciate the time and effort that goes into like a home decorated cookie. And like, does it look like a professional? No, but that's not the point. You know, the point is that you took the time, you did it, you put in your love and care. There's like no better way to bond with your friends and family than doing something tangible, DIY, and creative like this. Go make some. Send us your photos. I'm kind of sick of pies, but I'm not sick of pies because even after making like 20 of them, like at the end of the day, I still just want to eat pie. The thing with pie is you really have to nail the pie crust. And don't be intimidated. It seems like it's something that's going to be difficult to work with, but honestly, it's just three things: fat, flour, and water. The thing about using like a liquid fat, like a coconut oil or olive oil or something like that is honestly, I find it so hard to work with. Just stick to butter or a solid fat. So we did test shortening butter and a combo of those two things. We did a taste test, we did like a tender test, and just like an overall how was it to work with. We found that shortening does tend to give you a little bit more on the flaky side, but it doesn't taste as good. And the combo was good. It was, you know, a good compromise. We don't love the idea of doing combo if it's not gonna give you like a huge change in results. Butter is not only gonna give you a great flavor, but a great texture. And if you're gonna do all this work, you want it to taste as good as it possibly can. So as you know, here at Tasty, we love a secret ingredient. And to do that, we added a little bit of egg yolk into our water. We found it really gives it just like that added richness that you really, really want when you're going for kind of that ultimate holiday pie. And we're also gonna add ice water to our egg yolks. Literally be taking the tablespoons of water from a cup of ice water just to make sure that your water is as cold as it possibly can be. This is actually the pastry recipe that I learned in culinary school at Leith's. It just is so good. As you know, always add salt to everything that you do, including sweets, because it is a flavor enhancer. We are putting in cold cubed butter. We have to keep everything as cold as possible always. So you're gonna go in and you're not gonna use your palms, you're gonna use your fingertips as much as you can because your palms are warmer than your fingertips. So you're just really trying to take the big chunks of butter and rub them into the flour. So we're gonna kind of coat the flour with the butter. Once I'm happy and I have all the butters pretty well incorporated into the flour, I'm ready to add my liquid. We're gonna use our judgment here and just kind of as quickly as we can incorporate the liquid with the fat. This is still looking pretty dry, so I'm gonna go to the drier bits of the bowl and incorporate more of that egg yolk water mixture. How you can test that is you put some together in your palms, and if it's staying together in a little dough ball, then you're good to go. So once I'm happy that all the liquid's incorporated, I think that I have a good amount of moisture in here, dump it out onto our clean work surface and start to bring it together. Get it into like a nice ball, if you will. There's no like dry floury bits. There's nothing crumbling off of it. It's gonna be a lot easier if you make it into a disc. It's gonna be much easier to roll it out into a circle later. So I'm gonna wrap it up with cling film. We're gonna put it back in the fridge and let it chill out for a second. This is gonna let the flour and everything relax. So the thing about pie crust is it gets harder to work with the warmer that it is. So if your fat is getting really, really warm, it's gonna be hard to roll out and work with. And what you're gonna first do, flour the surface, you're gonna flour the top of the pastry dough. Kind of push down on the dough, starting from the bottom to the top, and smush, smush, smush. And it just kind of spreads the dough out before you start rolling. Every now and again, we're gonna give the dough a quarter turn. That's just gonna help ensure that we have a nice round dough. And it's also gonna make sure that we're double checking that our dough is not sticking to the surface that we're working on. Always smush the cracks back together whenever you see a big one forming, because it's only gonna get worse. You wanna roll it out to like 1/8 of an inch. Roll it out way bigger than your pan is. You can put your pan over the pie crust to make sure that you have enough. So the easiest, safest way to move it is to roll it up on your rolling pin. Here we go, it's not sticking to anything, voila. We don't want to stretch or tear the dough out. I'm going to lift the edges and almost lower it down in there. And then I'm gonna use my knuckles to push it into the corners. And then any big seams, just kind of press them out so they're not overlapping or anything. You want like a really clean side. So first go around and just kind of tuck this excess under, and so you have one kind of cohesive wall to work with, if you will. And now we're gonna go and crimp. So we're gonna use our knuckle of your left hand or right hand, and then the index finger and thumb of your other hand, and just go in and pinch in. So once it's crimped, we're gonna chill it down. We want it to be as cold as humanly possible before we throw it into a super hot oven. So now that we have a crust, let's talk pumpkin filling. So when it comes to dairy, when we were looking at a lot of different recipes, a lot of them have sweetened condensed milk, evaporated milk, and then some combo of fresh dairy as well. So sweetened condensed milk, it's got a ton of sugar. It's this like really thick, interesting product. Evaporated milk is a lot thinner than it, has a little bit of sugar, not nearly as much as sweetened condensed milk, but why not just use a fresh product? We understand it a little bit more, so we decided to go with half and half. We wanted to test 3 different things. So we wanted to test canned pumpkin as it is, roasting the canned puree, and then we also wanted to try fresh pumpkin. When we were first testing canned roasted, we wanted to put everything in the filling and roast it aside from the dairies, but we kind of made like a pumpkin caramel on accident. There's a little bit more margin of error there. We actually ended up just doing the spices in the pumpkin puree. That gave us an awesome pumpkin flavor. It kind of did the double work of not only roasting the pumpkin puree, but also really just enhance everything that's going into this and make it like a really intense, complex flavor, which is so good and so worth it. Cool, so scrape it all to one side, put it back in your bowl. So we're gonna throw in the granulated sugar, the dark brown sugar, just giving us a little bit of that molassesy flavor. Give it a little bit of vanilla for that flavor enhancer. 3 eggs and 1 egg yolk. And that egg yolk's just for a little bit of extra richness without too much extra moisture. And then just whisk this until it's completely smooth. And it's gonna be like this really nice, gorgeous custard. So what we're gonna do is pre-bake the pie shell. We need to fold up a big piece of parchment, and then we're gonna throw in, we just had like some dried chickpeas that we use. These are our baking beans, if you will. So kind of push them off to the side to hold up the walls, and we're good to go. You're gonna put this in about like 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15-20 minutes or so, depending on the pie dish that you're using. And to know that it's done, pull back the sheet of parchment with the beans inside, and you just wanna make sure there's no undercooked or like raw pastry left. So we have our pre-baked pie crust. Let's pour it all in there, get every little bit. There's gonna be a little bit of bubbles, and what you can try and do is kind of carefully plop it on the table and see if you can get out any of those bubbles. With a lot of custard pies, it's pretty common to start with a really hot oven and then lower it down. And what it's gonna do is give us like that really instant heat to get everything started. So I know that this might seem crazy, but roasting a real whole pumpkin and making this into your pie, this is so good. So cut it up, get it in big chunks. Don't go crazy with this. All we're really trying to do is get out the seeds and that little pulpy bit in the middle. Using a little paring knife makes it really easy to get all that stuff out. Get these big chunks onto a parchment lined baking sheet. Have a little fun with it. Just dry roast those suckers. Really high heat, like, I don't know, 400 for 15-20 minutes till you can really smell them. Again, developing that flavor. We're gonna throw the flesh of the pumpkin into a food processor with everything else that we need, the sugars, the eggs, the heavy cream, the vanilla, the salt, all the good stuff, and give it a whiz. It's not gonna be as smooth and kind of like mush, I guess, as the puree that comes out of a can, which is like really nice actually. Like it has a little bit more of a bite to it, but it's still like super creamy and delicious. Honestly, with the food processor, like do this more than you think because you do want a pretty smooth texture. So once we're to a good place, pour that into your pre-baked crust. If you really want to do something a little bit extra, like these steps don't take a ton of extra time and they give you a very complex and very unique take on a pumpkin pie. And same deal, we're gonna do a nice high heat to start and then we're gonna lower it down to finish the cooking. All right, so again, like we just could not decide between apple and pumpkin, so we gave you both. Guys, there are tons of different varieties of apples. The only thing that you really need to know for this one, like we're using Granny Smith because they're easily accessible, got a great tart flavor, they really work well in pies, but if you have different ones in your grocery store, as long as you're using cooking apples that'll hold up to cooking, doesn't matter. For apple pie, we tested 3 different preparations. We tested fresh apples, putting in macerated apples, which just means they sat in sugar and salt for a bit to draw out the extra moisture, and then we also tested a cooked apple recipe. We found that we preferred the macerated method because we had a lot of good like bite still to the apples, but since we took care of a lot of that moisture loss, we didn't have like huge gaps in our pie. You have a little bit of a bite, but they're cooked enough that it's not like you're biting into raw apple. And as you're peeling them, it's a really good idea to have a big bowl of water. If you have some lemons, pop a little in the water too. That'll just keep them from browning. So we're gonna use like so many apples because they do have a lot of moisture in them and they are gonna bake down. Core them, cut them into those little cheeks, and then slice them super thinly. So we're gonna macerate these apples. And what we're gonna do is put salt and sugar, which are both desiccants, and that's just a fancy way of saying that they draw out moisture from what they come in contact with. And the salt is not only gonna draw out moisture, but it's also gonna help enhance the flavors that are in there. I'm gonna put in cinnamon here, and a little bit of lemon juice. So what we're just adding aside from the desiccants are just a little bit of flavor that'll just kind of marinate a little bit. We're also gonna add half of our cornstarch now. So we're gonna toss all the apples and all this stuff, and we're actually gonna let it sit for about 30 minutes. It's a good idea to stir every like 10 minutes or so, just so the apples on the top or in the middle can really drain out all that extra moisture. After that 30 minutes, we're gonna let it sit in a colander over another bowl, and we're actually gonna just draw out all that liquid. So we really wanna make sure that we're getting out as much moisture from these apples as we can right now. So as you can see, I mean, look at all this moisture that came out of these apples, like holy moly. So we're gonna boil this down. There is a bit of cornstarch, so this mixture should thicken up a good amount right away. So we're gonna take the rest of that cornstarch, add a few tablespoons of water to make a slurry so we don't have like big chunks of cornstarch. And we're gonna throw our slurry in here and just thicken this up. We don't wanna boil it too much, but we're gonna add a little knob of butter there. So that's gonna stop the cooking process a little bit so it doesn't boil too much. It's also gonna give us a little bit of that extra oomph, that extra flavor and silkiness. Once that butter is pretty much melted in, we're gonna take it off heat. We want it to be kind of the texture of caramel, if you can see here. So it looks like a nice, thick caramel. So coat all the apples with this mixture. Once that's all done, we're ready to build our pie. We're going to roll out a sheet of dough, same as before. Nothing fancy. With the apple pie, we're actually not going to pre-bake it because it does need a good amount of time in the oven. You don't have to be like super crazy with laying the apples in here, but you do want to make sure that they're all flat, and if you can, have them be the round side out. Again, just so that we can pack all the apples in here. So every now and then, push them down. This is a lot of apples. We want to totally pack this guy full. And if there's any extra of that like kind of caramelly filling in there, go ahead and pour it on top of the apples. You shouldn't have a ton left over. And we're gonna put a new sheet of pastry on top of it, cut off the excess. So we're gonna make sure that we have a really secure seal between the top and the bottom layers. So pinch and fold, pinch and fold. And before you even worry about decorating the sides, you wanna make sure that that's really tight and sealed. Do the knuckle finger all the way around. And then go ahead and do an egg wash. Again, we're just gonna use straight up egg here. And then for a little extra crunch, we're gonna add this sanding sugar, and that's just gonna give us a nice texture. Fruit pies, and apple especially, has a lot of moisture in there. So we wanna cut little holes so that the steam can get out so we don't have our pie like literally explode when it's baking. And into the oven it goes. Wow, look how nice that is. The food stylist trick is to cut a little sliver out first, and don't worry about this one, it's gonna be ugly, so that you don't end up messing up the whole pie and you can get really nice slices. I know it's like a lot to do and there's these little tips and things there, but like if you're not gonna do it around the holidays and around Thanksgiving, like when are you gonna do it? Look at that. I mean, isn't it just so cool, the fact that it just has so much like oomph to it, you know? So whether you're a custard fan or a fruit pie person, we've got 2 different really awesome pies here. They're not too over the top, they're relatively simple, they're definite crowd pleasers. Go make this pie, do it for yourself, do it for the ones you love, be the champion of this year's Thanksgiving, and bring the pie.